Hello, so welcome back to my channel. This is Laith with Impact Skills Training, here to help you navigate good communication skills and to ensure that whomever you're speaking to, both in a meeting or a presentation, formal or otherwise, large or small, internal or external, there are some things that we need to get right in terms of the fundamental baselines in order to build on them, layer them, and accelerate our learning. So today is really just about how do we come across when it comes to these things and this, our body language. Very briefly put, I'm going to go through 4 or 5 different examples of how you come across when you're standing. Now, I'm standing right here, right now, although this is a virtual presentation, if you like, on Teams, Zoom, WebEx, whatever platform you're using. If you're standing, and I would wholeheartedly advocate standing, even when you're presenting online, it just gives you more energy, more presence, more gravitas, and your lungs are stretched, you're able to project your voice better. Anyway, all that aside, today is really about body language and some of the behaviors that we've witnessed over time and how they can affect your audience, which is really, really important. Now, we see these 5 behaviors consistently time after time after time, and there's some reasons for them, but I just wanted to highlight them on this short video to let you know, or at least just to show you this is something that you may be doing inadvertently, so perhaps unconsciously doing this because it's your comfort zone, and with your comfort zone it's easier for you to stay there than to come out of your comfort zone. So let's have a look at those. There are 5 behaviors. These are when you're standing, although I will touch on a couple of behaviors we've seen while you're seated in the virtual space, or in fact face to face in person. All right, so let's have a look at that right now. So the first thing I want to show you is the impact of communication. What do I mean by the impact of communication? So communication is key. We all know that. And your ability to ensure how you come across is really down to you as a presenter. Now, when you're presenting, this is a study done by Albert Mehrabian. He was a Persian chap who emigrated to the US, set up in UCLA, and is now well known for this particular study. And this study is overused. But I just want to highlight why it's so important, because it's the impact of communication. It's not the proportion of importance, as you can see in red, blue, and yellow. So let's go through those very, very quickly. How you look is 55%. So that is, remember, this is the impact of communication. So we're talking about over half of the impact you create when you come online in the virtual space, or you walk into a room in a face-to-face in-person presentation or meeting. Over half is how you look. Almost 40%, 38% in blue, is how you sound. We've already done some videos on how you sound. I'll link that to this video at the end. How you sound really is important. I won't dwell on it here, but it's how you go up and down in your pitch and your volume, tonality, passion, energy, enthusiasm, all of that stuff. That's for another video. One that's linked at the end is the fundamentals. And what surprises most people is what you see in yellow, and that's what you say. Only 7%. Now, don't misunderstand me or what this research suggests. What Albert Mehrabian was suggesting when you read through his original notes is that all 3 elements need to be in place in order for the impact of communication to be at its greatest. So all 3 elements. Now, it's not saying what you say is unimportant. That is false. What you say is absolutely important. That is the content. But you've all heard things along these lines. So, for example, when you walk into a room, somebody is looking at you and the rest of the people start looking at you. First impressions count. They really do. Before you open your mouth, they are already forming an impression and creating some kind of a judgment, whether we like it or not. It's unfortunate, but that's human nature. We form an impression. If somebody's walking into a high-profile business meeting as an expert, knowledgeable, experienced in this particular topic, and they happen to walk in with a torn t-shirt and jeans, then you've already formed an impression, even if they know what they're talking about. So impressions count, especially the first minute, first 30 seconds, depending on what you read and what you believe. It's a bit like don't judge a book by its cover, but people do. And authors and writers will tell you, and certainly publishers will tell you that, that the book cover is really important. The title is really important. So when you go into a shop, typically you're in an airport and you're looking through the books on the shelf, but you're going to kill some time. The ones that stand out are the ones that have been designed to stand out. So we do tend to judge a book by its cover, and we do tend to judge people as they walk into a room or appear online in the virtual space. So how can we maximize how we come across in the best possible manner? So this short video is all about how you come across when you're standing. And that's right now, right here, while I'm in the virtual space, or if I was in front of you in person in a real room. So there are 5 behaviors I want to go through, and I'll go through those right now. Here we go. So remember, how you look, which is the one we're focusing on here, is 55%. So I'm saying the stance, remember, don't lose 55% of the impact you could create when you walk in a room and or deliver virtually in the standing or standing space or a stance. So let's go through these one by one. Now you've got pockets, twitch, Velcro, dance, and tilt. Those are 5 different behavioral traits that we see on a very, very frequent basis. We've just labeled them to give them something to call them. All right, so let's have a look at that right now. So here we go. I've changed the camera angle so you can see more of my body, as it were, because this is about how you come across when you are standing. In other words, your ability to see the whole body. This is typically what we see when a presenter walks into the room. Yes, the tables may be this high, but if it's a theatre style or classroom style, then you really have nothing to hide behind. And I would strongly suggest you don't hide behind anything. That's for another video, a podium where you see the white knuckles of somebody grabbing it, or a table where somebody's holding on to it, sort of a table with their notes on it. I would suggest having nothing in front of you. You're more visible, it shows confidence, and it exudes sort of transparency for your audience because you've got nothing to hide. Anyway, let's move on to the first behavior. The first behavior I call pockets. This is for men and women. We all have trousers these days, and we see something like this. So now, although I'm standing, my hands are in my pockets. Now, I happen to be wearing a suit because I'm simulating this as a high-profile business meeting. But my hands are in my pockets. Now, I walk into the room and my hands are in my pockets and I start. Good morning, everybody. My name is Laith, and today we're going to talk about the budget for 2025 and how that's going to impact all our teams moving forward. Now, you may say there's not an awful lot wrong with that. It's okay to have hands in pockets. Maybe it's genuinely cold, so you want to keep your hands warm. But the feedback we generally get is that this, particularly if you're in a room with senior people as your audience, +1, +2 in the room, this might be perceived as a little bit casual, maybe over casual. And sometimes if it's over casual, you will get people thinking, and we've had this feedback from others when we simulate this scenario, where people thinking, well, if they're prepared, this meeting's been in the calendar for a month, it's a high profile meeting, if it's over casual or they're nervous or anxious, why is that the case? Have they not prepared enough? Have they not had enough time to rehearse? And then you get into the more negative sentiment in thought processes. Maybe it's not important enough for them, i.e. me as the presenter, to have practiced and rehearsed enough times to be able to come across as a very powerful presenter and eloquent in your delivery. So this, as basic and as innocuous as it may seem, can have very negative connotations. So hands in pocket, our advice is what to do is just have your hands nice and floppy down by your side. This looks more natural and neutral. Natural and neutral. This can have a spin put on it. Are they nervous? Are they cold? Are they anxious? Why are their hands in their pockets? Whatever you talk about, there's a spin on it. Whereas this, hands down by the side, you just look relaxed, you look ready, and you look well prepared to start your presentation. In fact, I'll share a story about this, about hands in pockets at the end. It is a little bit rude, but you're all grown up, and it's a genuinely true story, and it made me laugh a lot when I first heard this, but it really does demonstrate why hands in pockets are not the way to go. Right, the other one is the twitch. Now, we've all seen something like this. So I could have my hands in my pockets. You're not necessarily listening to what I'm saying because something else is going on down here. Or something like this that we've seen. There's a nervous twitch or a nervous tick that's going on. Or it could just be something like this. Now, again, nothing fundamentally wrong with this, but what I know and what we've had from our own research is that this becomes a distraction. You're not necessarily saying the wrong words. You're not necessarily saying it in a bad way. You can be heard, the volume is good, the inflection is good, but somehow there's a distraction. And if any of this stuff going on up here with my hands is a distraction, or it could be leaning on your toes, anything like that, there's some kind of nervous twitch, or rubbing your polishing your shoes, whatever it might be, this is all a twitch. And unfortunately, especially if you're wearing something dark, your fingers are very, very visible to your audience. And again, it just sparks off that thought process. What are they doing? Why are they so nervous? Why are they so anxious? And then all the negative ramifications that could come from that. So the twitch is something to be aware of. That was number 2. Number 3 is what we like to call in the UK, and I'm sure it's in other English-speaking countries as well, Velcro. Velcro is that stuff you get on laptop bags, which is sticky. It folds over the flap, and you just stick it down. That's Velcro. Velcro is very, very sticky. You have to pull it off in order to open the laptop bag or a pocket. So I call it Velcro because it's what a lot of people we see when they're presenting, seated or standing, but particularly when it's standing, it's very obvious and very visible, where their hands come together. Now, once or twice doing something like this, particularly at the beginning, may not be the end of the world. However, when it comes to gestures, and we'll do a whole new video on gestures and how that supports your message and how you can underpin what you're trying to say and help your message come through just by the power of gestures and body movement. But if your hands are together, it's very difficult to gesture, particularly if you're doing single-handed gestures or even two-handed gestures because they're stuck together. And we see lots of different styles and different manifestations of Velcro. So, for example, there are so many that I've given them names. So we call this one money in wallet. We see this a lot. We see the marketing pensive look. Good morning, everybody. My name is, we're going to talk about this, that, and the other. That's the marketing pensive look. We get one that's similar, which is the prayer. Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is, we're going to talk about the budget today. This is the prayer, I call it. You've also got the interlocking fingers, which seems like you're not quite begging, but you're desperate to get approval. So good morning, everybody. My name is. Hands, fingers interlocked. Not a great look. We've got the footballer's free stance kick. Now, doesn't seem like a terrible stance, but your hands are locked together again. Hence the name once again, Velcro. Difficult to separate them. Difficult to gesture one-handed or two-handed. So we just lock them together because we feel more comfortable. And if we feel more comfortable, then that's okay. Unfortunately not. It's your audience that needs to perceive you in a professional, open, transparent manner. If you're all closed up, that does not come across. It sends a message without you saying anything. It's the classic non-verbal signal that I'm closed, I don't want to be here, I'm nervous, I'm anxious. So that's the footballer's free stance kick. We even have the reverse handcuffs, I like to call them. So hands behind my back, but they are locked together and I'm not moving them because I just feel more comfortable this way. So be aware the reverse handcuff. Worst case scenario, and I'm sure you've heard this before, is this. Now I feel comfortable. Your arms are folded. This is very closed body language. Now, on its own, it's not the end of the world. And once or twice, it's not the end of the world. But if you are presenting for 20, 30 minutes with your arms locked like this, just now and again open them up, it doesn't look great. Doesn't show or demonstrate transparency or openness. By virtue of your arms being open, you're being more inclusive, you're being transparent. Yes, you will definitely feel more vulnerable, but if you know about leadership and leadership skills, vulnerability is key. And if you show and demonstrate vulnerability and openness and transparency it just starts to build that relationship, that rapport, and that trust. And in business, we all need trust. So let's go through those once again. Pockets, not a great look. And you might start fiddling in your pocket and moving. There might be some free spare change if you still carry coins these days, or a key or a set of keys, and they're jingling and making noise. The twitch, which I've already demonstrated, something going on with your fingers, or they're just moving around, or you're polishing your shoes, or you're doing all sorts of weird stuff. And then Velcro, whether it's fingers interlocked, the prayer, the marketing pensive look, you know, the hands crossed, the footballer's free stance, all sorts of behaviors. Number 4, the dance. Now, I'm an energetic person, full of energy, especially when it comes to this kind of thing, presentation skills, leadership skills, all sorts of communication skills programs that we do. The dance can become a massive distraction. So dancing is when you have got all that energy, particularly at the beginning of a presentation, and you're full of beans, you're full of energy and enthusiastic, but also and equally you're anxious and nervous, and all that nervous energy has to be dissipated somewhere. So you tend to what I call dance. And that means that you're moving around a lot to try and get rid of that nervous energy, particularly in the first couple of minutes. And coming back to the beginning, as I said, people will make a judgment. And if they think you're too nervous and too anxious right at the beginning, and it carries on, this behavior makes you feel comfortable as a presenter because you're moving, you're using up that energy, and you feel like you're connecting with people on this side of the room and then people on this side of the room. But actually, what's happening here? Because the feedback we normally get when this is happening is, oh gosh, I wish you would just stand still. Because that constant movement back and forth, the dancing or jiggling around, or whatever it might be you might be doing on your feet, in and of itself becomes a huge distraction for your audience. They have to follow you like a caged tiger, going left and right, or up and down, or moving around. So it's a distraction. And as with all the other behaviors, the pockets, the twitch, and now the dance, anything that's a distraction is taking away the power, the strength from your message. So in other words, you're diluting what you're trying to say just by virtue of you being distracting in some form or shape. So that was the dance. Number 5, a little bit less innocuous, but it's the tilt. We see this a lot as well, male or female. Now, I'm standing 50-50 weight distribution left and right, but you will see this a lot. It's very subtle, but you will see it. So now I'm getting a bit tired. Now I'll just lean to one side. So all my weight is on my left hip now. So I'm talking and chatting. So I'm slightly off center. And it becomes obvious after a while that you're slightly off center. This hip, this leg, then gets tired because you've been leaning on it for 2-3 minutes. So all of a sudden you go, oh, that's better. Now I'm leaning on the right hip and the right leg. Makes me feel better, but then it gets tired. So I then go back to the other side. And before you know it, and please watch your colleagues or your co-workers, they will do this. Before you know it, this has got tired again, so you move on to this side. And then for sure, you're going to get this sort of slight dance, but tilting movement every minute or two. And it becomes quite metronomic. And I've been in audiences where they're watching this and they say, I wish that chap or that lady would just stand still. They just seem to be like leaning in odd ways from left to right. And I know what they mean. I've seen it too. It is a distraction. So all I would say, very, very simple. And your body was designed to stand on 50-50 weight distribution on both feet. Feet slightly hip width or shoulder width apart. Hands down by your side, and just start to gesture. We'll come on to gestures on another video. But this one is about your stance. And what I would say, and we've worked for lots of high fashion industry as well, they say your clothes are designed to hang off your body when you are standing, feet straight, not too wide like John Wayne, if you're old enough, John Wayne without the horse. Alternatively, not too straight, like you're standing up like a soldier with your feet too close. No. Just relax your shoulders, hold them back, but relax your shoulders, feet about hip width or shoulder width apart, nice and relaxed, and just let your arms flop and drop to the side. None of this twitching stuff. None of your hands in pockets, none of this Velcro stuff, none of this dancing around or tilting from side to side. Just relax. If you're not sure, make sure you can find yourself what I call an anchor. For me, when I'm presenting to a group, 100, 200, 300 plus, virtually or in person, just did one recently for a couple of hundred people, I, to myself, stamp my left and right foot, always in that order, to know that I'm now anchored to that spot. It does not mean, I repeat, it does not mean that I cannot move. It's just when I start, I want to create the greatest impression that I can. So I'm standing nice and loose, nice and relaxed, but my shoulders are back, chin is up, and I'm ready to start. Now, I promised you a story about hands in pockets. So I'm going to share that now. This is an absolutely genuine true story. And it was one of my colleagues who was going over to the US, and they were going to train a very high profile senior manager, as in the C-suite in fact. It was there. Now all I'm going to say is that this chap was in accounts and was in finance, and it was for a very, very large American company, a household name. You will know the name, but I'm obviously not going to share it. And this was one of the C-suite level directors at this company, who was very talented, knew his job, and absolutely great at the job. The only problem was the presentation style. Although he had all this knowledge and experience up here, he couldn't share it in an eloquent or elegant manner, because as we saw from previous videos, that one of our greatest fears as human beings, but particularly in business today, is our ability, and as small and as basic as this sounds, it's so true, I see it every day. One of our greatest fears is simply to stand up in front of a group and speak in a confident, eloquent, elegant manner. It is one of our greatest fears, greater than illnesses, money worries, finances, and even death, if you look at the reports. So I understand the fear, and I'm sure you do as well, but it's practice that will get you over this fear. In any case, back to this chap. My colleague went over, and we do what we call a baseline. Well, let's call this gentleman John. John, please stand at the front of the room. Tell me a little bit about who you are, how did you get to work today, and what you do in work. Just a minute or two, nothing terrible. And he did. And we filmed it, as we always do, or at least my colleague did. And John was standing at the front, and he had his hands in his pockets. One of the classic behaviors we see all the time. And his hands are in his pockets, but I don't know if you can see that. I'm wearing a dark trousers with a dark suit, perhaps not. But if I do it on the lighter background, you can see that my hands are moving in my pockets. And it became a distraction. So once he finished, my colleague said, "Great, John, fantastic, thank you. Come and sit down. Let's review your baseline." And as they went through it, my colleague said to John, in this case, let's call him John, "John, great, thank you for that. But please help me understand, what is it you're doing with your hands in your pockets?" And this is absolutely true. He said, "Oh, I'm squeezing my balls." So my colleague, who's female, who's in her 50s, got 2 grown-up children, and has been doing this for 30 years, went white as a sheet, as you can imagine. And no sooner did he say it, and he realized what he said. What it was, he'd pulled out 2 squash balls, squash as in the sport, 2 racquetball balls or squash balls. So they had a bit of a giggle and a big laugh about it. And it turns out that John was so nervous and anxious when he gives talks or presentations that he'd been on a stress management program. And on that program, they asked him to take, this is some time ago, as you can imagine, 2 foam balls, stress balls, put them in his pocket. And whenever he felt stressed or anxious or nervous, just to squeeze on the balls to relieve the tension. And that's what he was doing. Now, we saw the funny side of it, and which is fantastic, and it becomes a story that we tell quite regularly. Now, here's the thing. John had been presenting for years, and we got a call from HR to help him out in terms of his presentation skills. The problem was he'd had this stress management program to help him get over his nerves and anxiety. So he'd been presenting with his hands in his pockets with that motion for many, many months, a year or 2. Now, by virtue of his seniority and his stance in the organization, not one person, of course, can you imagine? Not one person had asked him, "What are you doing with your hands in your pockets, John, when you're presenting in front of a couple hundred, 300 people, or at the annual review, or perhaps at a town hall, or perhaps at the annual general meeting. Standing up on stage, your hands are even more visible, and he was doing the same actions. And that's the frightening part. Now, we caught that and we've adjusted it, and now he's actually a very, very good presenter, years and years ago. But now he's a fantastic presenter because that energy, enthusiasm, and product knowledge and knowledge of his own industry is fantastic. However, until and as when somebody points out an unconscious behavior, you will never know that that behavior is being manifested without other people giving you that feedback. So this was all about the stance, what you do when you're standing virtually or in person in the real world. So pockets, remember, you probably won't forget that story now. Hands in pockets, be careful. That was a particularly poignant story, but the same happens when you've got change in your pockets or a set of keys or something that's noisy or rattly. Jingle, 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 it's a distraction. The twitch, remember the twitch? Don't do this, it's a distraction and dilutes your message. Same with the Velcro, whatever you're doing with your hands. This is all Velcro behavior. It's a barrier between me and you, so I feel secure and I feel safe. But to you, this is a barrier, and it shows that I'm closed, not open, and not transparent. So remember, the Velcro is a closed action. The dance, as I demonstrated earlier, feels like you're a caged tiger, and just, it's a distraction. It's too much going on at the front here. And then finally, the tilt that we see a lot of. So those are the 5 behaviors to definitely avoid when you're standing. Does it take practice? Absolutely resounding yes. What's the best way to get over those behaviors? Practice in front of a camera, put your device, whatever it is, a phone, an iPad, film yourself, watch how you present. And when you can see yourself back presenting, this is when you start to appreciate some of the behaviors that you're not aware of until you see yourself back. Or, as I've said on our previous videos, get some trusted co-workers or colleagues in a room and let them watch you and give you some honest feedback. So that's been me. That's all about the stance, whether you're standing in front of a group of real live people in person or in the virtual space. Avoid those 5 behaviors. They will not help you and they will not support your message. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Please leave any comments or funny stories that you might have. I'm always interested in reading them, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care. Bye for now.